This video will concern laws in the state of Oregon concerning firearms, etc. Self-forever sleep versus passing a high-capacity magazine usage ban, that's very important the way it's phrased, and a 5-year gun buyer's permit done through vote of, by, and for the people. Overruling, at least partially, hopefully with very little influence, you'll have to look up the history of this, but overruling our government when they don't do what we tell them to. 1994 federal ban on high-capacity magazines ended in 2004. Now you can find, 10-round magazine caps existing in many states, or 15. It varies. And sometimes it's based on the, quote, caliber. It's actually cartridge or chamber or type of cartridge, whether it's a rifle, a pistol, whatever. Washington, California, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, Hawaii, Maryland, Massachusetts, New Jersey, New York, Rhode Island, Vermont, and now Oregon. Previous law in Oregon was a hunting magazine capacity limit. And it depended on some other variables sometimes and where you were. And they were local and or state. And a requirement for a background check before a firearm was purchased from any seller or dealer. And I'll bring up really quickly, in the city of Portland, Oregon, and many other places, you had to have not just a permit to own a gun, that's the person getting a permit, and not a background check on the purchase, but you had to have a permit for concealed carry, even if you're open carrying, just so that it was an all-inclusive, you get this permit, and it's much faster for doing a background check for each purchase. This did not cover personal purchases between people, but then they decided to make that law, but it's very hard to enforce, and I think it's a waste of time. But anyway, that was a seller, any seller, including you and me, or dealer, had to do a background check, and there was a magazine limit only on firearms used in hunting. Warning, if it's a fixed magazine, meaning it's part of the gun and you can't just quick change, instead of 10 rounds changed in a second, it's 10 rounds doing one at a time. Or you had a speed loader. And there was also a ruling, well, speed loaders aren't allowed. Even if it's a piece of plastic tubing and I just pull the spring down and load them really quickly, well, that's different. Then what's the line cutoff? Now via 114, it's a Class A $6,000 fine, 1 year jail, misdemeanor prohibition on magazines capable of holding more than 10 rounds. Being made, or is it manufactured? It says manufactured. That's a clue. Imported, purchased, sold, possessed, used, or transferred. Mere possession is banned. And then they back off on it in the other wording for it that says you're allowed to have them, but you're not allowed to use them. That's so you can sell them to people in Idaho or whatever, get rid of them, and say, I have one 30-round magazine here for an AR-15. I want 3 10-round mags. Okay. I have a 60-round mag or a 100-round mag. I need the equivalent of magazines. I'll take fewer than the exact number, just so that you don't lose capacity. If you're not aware of it, a ridiculously large number of people took my advice, and the advice I give anybody, if you have a firearm and you want to store a bunch of ammo, just load them all into magazines that are really cheap, that'll work most of the time, and just expect to change them out, and just store them that way. That way they're fast loadable. It's the whole point of having magazines is so you can quick load. Or have a speed loader. That'll work. Next. Other part. Gun buyer permit. Not a gun ownership permit. Not a gun being permitted. Not a gun database. A gun owner permit or gun owner database. Besides the gun permit that's required in some cities. This is a statewide, you have to have a permit, a gun permit. But it's for buying the gun, not necessarily for keeping and bearing arms legally for specific types. They could have congealed all this together and just say, yeah, you have to have this. We're just going to make it everywhere as Portland. Concealed carry permit. It's the same cost, basically, right? Let's continue. And it's done through the Department of State Police. It's done through the local law enforcement for issuing it and also for applying. It requires a photo ID, fingerprints, safety training, criminal background check, and a fee payment. And if they made this to where it was also, just at the same time, a concealed weapons permit and inclusive. It would be not much of a difference in price, and it would just make it to where you'd have a ridiculously large number of concealed carry permit carriers, which means they wouldn't be open carrying. We wouldn't be discussing this. 721,000 people in the state of Oregon were outvoted by 20,000 people more at 741,000. This was a vote put through to shove it down the legislature's throat. You will put this on the books. And it was poorly written, either A, because they didn't give a shit or they're incompetent, or B, because a bunch of lawyers or lawmakers got a hold of it and tweaked it a bit to where it had lots of wiggle room and lots of vagueness, or at least tried to. Now, I'm going to read back the rhetoric of conspiracy theorists and Second Amendment advocates that always spout propaganda. I swear to God, they keep repeating the same stupid things that no one is listening to unless it's a battle cry you want your fellows to follow. It's not turning anybody's opinion. But I'm going to read back my concerns. Do people who are committing self-forever sleep need to use 11 rounds? The majority of deaths, quote unquote, from firearms in the United States, and in every other place I can find in the United States specifically, is people committing self-forever sleep. The most likely victim of your firearm and the most likely person to harm you is you. By 60-80% of all deaths. In mass shootings, yes, firearms with high-capacity magazines are used more often. But that's only because you keep defining it as excluding gang violence and a bunch of other stuff that obviously is gun violence. If you say this is to curb crime and you exclude crime statistics because you want to talk about for the children, we have a problem here. Again, it's not nitpicking. It's called people lie about this, okay? But again, the people, 1.4 million people in the state of Oregon voted on this. Period, full stop. You had your chance to vote. You either went out and did it or not. I'm torn. But I'd rather have this happen this way than have the legislature with people getting big money from large companies. Will the Second Amendment be infringed? Do you have the right to keep and bear arms? You notice it said manufacturing high-capacity magazines or having a gun manufactured with a high capacity. Manufacture is designed as a wording in the legal system, and it can be challenged this way, and it will be, of a company making it. A private citizen making their own firearm would not be restricted this way. It doesn't prohibit personal manufacturing, no, personal making. Don't use the word manufacture. But again, it's a magazine. Just trade the damn things. Just do it. If you're a protester and I want to go to jail, you're being an asshole and you're giving people ammo, pun intended, for arguing that you're irrational. If you stop disobeying the law, they can't at least claim you're a criminal, because at that point, if you overtly go out of your way to get arrested, you're defined as a criminal. They're leaving an out for you to be able to sell these across border to another state. I recommend you do this straight across trade and immediately do this on Gunborker or whatever. Next, 1 year criminalization for owning them if they're the most common firearms. Are the most common firearms having this capacity? Or are they grandfathered, pre-owned, high-capacity magazines allowed? That hasn't been explained. Well, you can have them, but you can't use them. Now, use them has to have a narrow range of explanation. Putting them into a gun versus using them for storage. Can you convert your high-cap magazines into speed loaders? Can you convert your gun into using a high-cap magazine to speed load? It's 10 rounds at a time either way, right? Okay, let's continue. Next. Obviously, putting a magazine in that takes 0.2 of a second for some people to load and start firing from versus loading 10 rounds versus slamming a bunch of men, John Wick style, only you're doing 10 of them at a time. By the way, I want to point out that some guns allow you to have variable length cartridges. So you could load more than 10 rounds in your average shotgun. Do they base it on 2 3/4 as the standard or based on a chamber limit of 3.5? You're going to find a lot of guns being rechambered to 3.5 inch and saying, yeah, it's a 3.5 inch chamber gun. If I put 3.5 in it, it can't hold 10 rounds. But if I use mini shells or modified flare cartridges, obviously it will. Reloaders be damned, right? Is this gun registration? No, it's gun owner registration. I don't know why people complain about gun registration when gun owner registration is per person. Just another racket for the... We're going into the rhetoric and answers here, by the way, if you didn't get my tone of voice here. Just another racket for the Fed and the state and the ATF to create instant felons overnight. Again, if they allow buyback, or if they acknowledge buyback would have to happen, if they have to pay you the going rate for product, I'm not sure that would work. Issuing warrants. The ATF, Fed, and state, okay, yeah, but the ATF isn't supposed to issue warrants. Knocking on people's doors, dragging them into courts, charging them with owning a firearm that was owning things that were formerly legal. Will we be limited to a certain number of rounds per year? Depending on where you are, yeah, you already are. In fact, on federal level, there's an effective ban on having more than a certain number of rounds simply because of practicality. Yeah, whatever. It's based on how many pounds of propellant and how many pounds of lead and stuff. We'll continue. On average, are most semi-automatic rifles having magazines 15 rounds or higher, 10 rounds or higher? If I'm shooting a whole stack of 22 short for plinking something less than 100 feet away, I'm probably going to need a lot of rounds because it's not really accurate and it's a challenge. If I'm using a shotgun, I don't think that would match. What about pistols? UPS, USPS, and FedEx will no longer deliver high cap magazines for your insert name of handgun. Dismantle them, their parts, their replacement parts and maintenance parts. Everybody's been doing that for years. I don't know what this guy was complaining about. Yes, I'm commenting on it or a specific video. Cash bail within the criminal justice system. Is this institutional racism or a war on the poor? Someone made a comment about it being, it's this libtards, and it's, if you have a bunch of money, there's no punishment. If you have enough money, you can own a machine gun. If you're poor, you can't. Is this going to be a long, drawn-out legal battle? Yes, because the wording in it is too fluffed. That means it's not really applicable in court. It doesn't contain precise legal language. And anybody who would leave that up to the legislature to tweak that is an idiot. Maybe it does contain legalese, so it's locked down. I don't see anybody saying so yet. By the way, if you're doing a law of, by, and for the people and getting us to vote on it, include the plain English version of it and then the legalese, so that, and then forbid the legislature from altering it. They either have to find a reason to strike it down entirely in the courts or it goes through. Sorry. But yeah, I approve of overruling our government because our government's run by people who are on the take. People are too damn complacent, allowing and tolerating lawmakers to continue to do their gun grab plans. This is a conspiracy theorist. This wasn't the lawmakers necessarily. This was us voting. We get to tell them no and we get to tell them yes. Does a driver's license for driving a car work as a gun purchasing license? This is a car purchasing license. Driving a car isn't a right, it's a privilege, so you have to get licensed for it. But you can buy a car without a license. This is the changeover people are complaining about. Okay, that's not rhetoric. Okay, that's a good question. If you hate it when people call a MAGA clip a rifle an assault weapon, and they mix up automatic with semi-auto, full auto, etc., then calling all Democrats socialists and communists is no better, and you're just repeating propaganda you're cutting and pasting. When the majority of people vote against your wish, deal with it. Comply with the law. Make it to where you can't be declared a felon. If you think it's a trap, don't walk into it. Next. Pro-Second Amendment rhetoric. People should have voted against the Socialist, Communist, Democrats. It's exponentially eroding Second Amendment. We're a satellite state of California. Okay, I agree right there. People from other states migrating, coming here with stupid ideas. That's freedom of travel. Fuck you, I have my rights. Next. People buying into false narrative notion that somehow this will reduce crime. I actually agree with you. For the children, or safety, or to reduce violence. Deaths weren't a whole lot worse 8 years ago with no limits. That's not a good argument. Don't do that. Next. Uvalde, Texas police stand down. Push to control gun control narrative. Someone's doing a conspiracy theory about it being a false flag again. PDF and Antifa are funded by the Soros. Again, conspiracy theory bullshit. The UN NGO plan to confiscate firearms. They've said it overtly. No proof of this or evidence anywhere. Not even other people saying it. Where did you get this from? Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with that.